whenever you get rolling.
Well, I want to interlude with this, or just say this beforehand. One thing I taught in schools, and I work with really rough children, right, juvenile justice and different things. And one thing I would always hear is, "You ain't my mama. You ain't my mama. You can't tell me what to do. You ain't my mama." So that's really where the basis comes from. Is a lot of these young people are speaking from that place of trauma, right? And so just to be able to really understand, and really to have teachers understand that schools need to be a safe place for these kids, because we don't understand what's going on in their home. And so that's just kind of my opener to this group, to let you know where I'm coming from. Ultimately, I don't know how many other people worked with young people in here, but that's a common denominator with a lot of teachers, that they hear, "You ain't my mama." So that's really where it's coming from. Trauma ain't my mama.
Okay.
And I'm ready when you are.
Ready when you are. Super excited. All right.
Beautiful.
Take it away.
All right. Well, hello. My name is Rachel Richardson, and I'm so grateful that you allowed me to come down to your school and share a little bit about my life. And so how many of you today, I want to start off with a question. How many of you today can guess my nationality? Who thinks they know what I am? One question I was raised growing up all the time, people say, "Well, what are you? What are you?" Yes, Mike, what do you think I am, Mike?
Puerto Rican.
Puerto Rican. Okay, who else? Do we have any other guesses?
I'm going to go with some Italian.
Okay, Italian, all right. Anybody else? Mixed. Thank you, Miss Wynette. She knows because she's a Richardson, so I got a little family in the audience. So if y'all don't want to speak up, then my cousin, Miss Richardson, will go on and speak up for me. So yes, I am mixed. So imagine, if you would, growing up in a household where mixed really wasn't a thing. Now you guys have a beautiful, rainbow full of people. But when I was growing up, that wasn't the case. You were either black or white. And guess what? Any room I went into, I was not black enough and I was not white enough. Because I'm going to tell you now, when I went to my black family, I had never eaten hog mogs and greens and these things that they were eating, and oxtails and pig's feet. And who ate that? At my white family's house, we ate things like green bean casserole, and we had spinach. At my black family's house, they called it greens, and they would put oxtails. And I'm like, who eats oxes and pig's feet? Aren't these things we should be throwing out? So again, you got to understand, being a young girl growing up in two totally different households and two totally different atmospheres in a time when nobody was really bridging the gap. There wasn't a lot of white people who had that experience, and there wasn't a lot of black people who had that experience. And so I was growing up in these two atmospheres, trying to take all these things in as a young person, trying to figure out, where do I really fit in? Where do I really belong? And everywhere I would go, I would just hear people say, "Well, you ain't my mama. You ain't my mama. You can't tell me. You ain't my..." And I would begin to think, who is my mama? Who is my mama? Because my mother was a drug addict, and maybe some of you can relate. I'm not saying everybody in here has the same story, but what I will tell you is a little bit about my story. And this is my story, right? This was a young girl growing up really confused, trying to figure out if she was black or white. Would she ever be accepted by either or? Because it didn't matter where I went to. Again, if I was with my white family, I was beautiful. If I was with my black family, I had no booty. I had crinky hair, but my white family didn't know how to comb my hair, but my black family didn't like my hair because you had good hair. So it was just so much confusion growing up. And so this was the young Rachel just trying to fit in, trying to figure out, where do I go? Who am I? Where do I belong? This was me when I was 15 years old. So what happened in my mother's home was I was actually being abused by my stepfather in many ways than one. There was a lot of abuse going on, and I didn't understand then that this didn't happen in other homes, but I thought this was normal. I thought that, everybody got whoopings that left bruises and marks and got slapped with things like extension cords and flip-flops and hangers and whatever could be found. I didn't know this wasn't normal. We didn't call that abuse in my home. We called that discipline. And say something, do something. If you're feeling froggish, leap something. So we just didn't say anything. I learned how to keep my mouth shut real fast. And so I didn't understand that was abuse. I didn't know that your stepdad wasn't supposed to watch you take showers or do things, I thought these were normal things. So I didn't understand that other young people weren't going through these things, because I'd never stayed in a school long enough to make friends anyway. See, my mother was an alcoholic and my father was a band, and he was gone. And so I really didn't get the opportunity to know what normal was when I was growing up. And everywhere that I went, everybody would always ask, "What are you? What are you? And can I touch your hair? Can I touch your skin? Like, where do you come from? And what are you?" And I would say, "I'm human." And then I would go into my room and I would look in my mirror and I would go, "What am I? Who am I? Where did I come from?" And why doesn't anybody want me around? I was my mother's only child, and she didn't want to hear from her daughter or see her daughter. So growing up surrounded by such addiction and instability and pain, it shaped my early beliefs in myself and the world around me. I just believed that these things were what they were, and you don't say anything. You don't air your dirty laundry. You don't take anything outside of this home. So that's how I grew up. Now, a lot of you may be carrying wounds, and you don't even recognize these things as being what we call trauma, because trauma is just an event that happens to you, and you emotionally have to deal with that thing. So I was angry a lot of the time. I was anxious. To this day, I have no fingernails. I bite my nails so bad. My husband has to go, babe, you're biting your nails again. I don't even have any anxiety going on. But because of the things that I grew up with, these were things that I did. I didn't know anxiety or anger or self-sabotage or all these words that they identify as trauma triggers and natural reactions. I just thought, this is me. This is who I am. If you don't like it, you ain't got to. And that I had this, chip on my shoulder and this attitude. And I didn't care if it was a teacher. I didn't care if it actually was my mama. She couldn't say anything to me anyway. She never wanted to when I needed her. So why now? Why would you want to say something to me now? Oh, all of a sudden you noticed because I took my ponytails out? She would braid my hair into 2 braids because my hair was super thick. And again, just to kind of make friends, I would let the kids unbraid my braids. And man, when I would go home and listen, when I tell you that was when I lost my first tooth and I ended up in CPS where Child Protective Services had to come in because my mother tried to throw me over a 2nd-story balcony just for simply taking my hair out. So you can imagine being a young girl raised in these 2 totally different cultures and these 2 totally different worlds, all the confusion and pain I lived in. I just wanted to be somebody. Again, I was never black enough. I was never white enough. I was never hip enough. I was never shy enough. My mouth was too big. It was too small. You don't speak enough. You speak too much. It was always something. And so because of that, I took on the labels. And those labels became my identity. I took on the label of being a nerd because I enjoyed school. I liked reading. I liked math. I liked things that other people may not like. I enjoyed that. So I took that label on. I took on the label of being the fat girl with 4 eyes and no booty. I took that on. I inhabited that. And I would go in and I would look in my mirror and I would just, now I know because I got a husband of 22 years who reminds me of how beautiful I am. Hey. But then I had no idea. So here I am looking in the mirror thinking, man, if I could just change this, or if I could just change that, or if I didn't say that, or if I didn't do this. Those labels I started to take on as my identity. And when I started to take those labels on, because of some things that happened in my home, people would call me fast. Oh, she's so fast. Well, I didn't think I was fast. I just thought this is what you do when you're looking for love. So I began to do things that other people couldn't comprehend or understand. I couldn't comprehend or understand. But because those labels became my identity for so long, I had to be able to break free from false identities. I had to find, who are you really? And as you're sitting here today, I want you to ask yourself, who are you really? Who are you really? When you leave here, are you completely different? When you walk into your mother's house or into your father's house, if he's around, again, my story is my dad wasn't around and my mother was an alcoholic. So any home I walked into, nobody was there. I'm an only child. I have no brothers. I have no sisters. It's just me. So I had to feed me. I had to clothe me. I had to take care of me. I had to play with my toys. I was very much alone. So then I was a loner, but I loved being around people. But who are you when you leave here? I'm sure that the person that you are in the classroom sometimes isn't actually who you are when you leave here. So think about that. Who are you? Because people label you, but the labels are not your identity. And who told you who you were? The people who told me that I was, the big girl with no booty and 4 eyes were my cousins, the people closest to me. Because if anybody was like my brothers and sisters, it was like my cousins. It was my cousins. Because no matter what happened to me, my family was not letting CPS or those people or, the man get involved in any way. My family wanted to make sure that we took care of the kids. So if my aunties had to take me in, their daughters ended up sharing a room. If my uncle took me in, his daughter shared a room. If my grandma took me in, I was on the couch. It didn't matter. They weren't just going to let me be in the system. They didn't want me in the system. So my cousins that were closest to me were the ones who were telling me who I was. And I was believing them. And ultimately, I learned later on that trauma might talk, but I don't have to listen to it. But when you're young, I was listening to anybody that I could. I didn't know that I was living in survival mode. I never realized that. And so again, like I said, I did things. I acted out in anger. I had a lot of anxiety. I did a lot of people pleasing. And people pleasing led me to be pregnant at 15 years old. Out there just doing what I thought I was supposed to be doing because I was fast. And I got pregnant at 15 years old. Yes, I did. And you know what? The first thing I thought I needed to do was hurry up and get rid of that baby. Because if my mother found out, she was really going to kill me. If she beat me down and almost threw me over a balcony just for taking out my ponytails and my hair, what was she going to do now that I was pregnant? So I went right to the abortion clinic. I'm here to share my life with you. I went right to the abortion clinic, and don't you know, I heard a heartbeat. And as soon as I heard that heartbeat, I got up off that table. I ran out of that place so quick, because one thing you couldn't tell me was that was just a sack of multiplying cells. That was a child. That was a person. It had a heartbeat. So I stopped at Walmart and I stole some pregnancy tests. Now, mind you, I knew I was pregnant. My mother didn't know yet. And she was the one who held the stick. Back then we had pregnancy tests that you have a stick. I don't even know how you see if you're pregnant nowadays. They just know. Apparently an app on your phone probably tells you if you're pregnant today. But back then you had a stick. And my mother had to hold the stick under my urine because I was so scared of what was getting ready to happen. I was so afraid. I was a baby raising a baby. I didn't know what the outcome would be. What would her life ever be? How would I protect her if I couldn't even protect myself? How would anything be different for her if it wasn't different for me? And where do I learn difference from? How am I ever going to be able to teach her things that I've never learned? So again, there comes that trauma trying to be my mama again, trying to influence my decision. You can't raise a baby. You got to hurry up and get rid of this baby. There's nothing in you that could take care of a child. You've never changed a diaper. You've never made a bottle. What can you do with a child? But I tell you what, I had that baby. And even in my picture now, I don't know if you guys can see how young I looked. I looked like a baby, really with a baby. I looked about a good 12 or 13 years old. I still wore my ponytail half up, half down. I looked like a baby. But ultimately, that baby ended up leading to grandkids now. So I'm glad that I kept the baby. The long of short of it is, are your choices coming from your future or from your past wounds? Now, if I would have chose to say, there's no way I can have a baby because of everything I've been through, I wouldn't have the future that I have now. My daughter wouldn't have the future. My grandchildren wouldn't have the future they have now. When it's all said and done, healing, it's a personal responsibility, but we need a community to be able to do it. Maybe you've gone through some things. Maybe your attitude suggests the fact that you're going through some things. It happens. A lot of times we get labeled, right? And again, because I grew up in both households, I know we say, oh, well, they're angry black women. They're crazy white women. We always have these labels. And because everybody thinks I'm Spanish, they automatically start speaking Spanish, right? And they got a lot of kids. Spanish people have a lot of kids. And all these stereotypes. The system, the world calls them bias. You have biases you don't even realize. Every time you see somebody, your mind is constantly telling you yes, yes, no, no. The movies tell us what we're supposed to be. The commercials tell us what we're supposed to be. Books tell us. Songs tell us. But do we really know who we are? Things that we have been through are not who we really are. We've gone through those things. And because we've gone through those things, we can take other people out of things now. So ultimately at 15, I ended up pregnant. By the time I was 20, I ended up pregnant yet again, this time by somebody who ended up in prison for pimping. So this is not a game. I've picked the wrong choices just like my mother did my whole life. By the time I was 21, I was sitting in jail facing the rest of my life in prison because at a graduation party, I shot a gun in the air and that bullet ricocheted off a sign and ended up killing my very own uncle. Now, before that, I was a teacher at the YMCA. I wasn't a murderer. But don't you know, when I went to trial fighting for my life at 21 years old, they brought back everything I did in school. They brought back a young lady from 8th grade. She beat me up in 8th grade. A young lady from 10th grade, she took my man in 10th grade. Trying to build a character. This is what the jury, what kind of character does she have? Who is Rachel really? She looks cute now with a bow in her hair and but who is she really? Let's pull up these school files and see who she really is. Let's pull up these school files and see how many times she got suspended. How many truancies she had. How many times she was absent. They didn't know then what I was going through in my home. I didn't have a car. I couldn't drive myself. So all the times that I was absent, that shouldn't have been on me. That shouldn't have been my fault. But here I am at 21 years old facing the rest of my life in prison for a complete accident. And they start bringing up my school records. Now, if you're anything like me, you think that come 18, things will disappear, right? Things will disappear. Your record gets sealed. You'll never have to worry about the things you did when you were younger. It's fine. You're out of here. No big deal. But guess what? I'm here to remind you and to let you know, if nobody else did, they pull that stuff up when they need to. Everything you're doing today remains with you until. They don't seal your record. It doesn't disappear. So ultimately, a jury found me guilty of second-degree murder with the use of a deadly weapon. And in the state of Nevada, where I'm from, you get 1 life sentence for the murder, and you get 1 life sentence for the weapon. So at 21 years old, I was supposed to do 20 years, parole into another 20 years, do 40 years. I wouldn't have even gone up to a parole board or had a chance to get out until I was 61 years old. And you know what the number one thing they talked about in my trial was? Everything I had been through when I was young. They said Rachel had this malice in her heart, this hatred in her heart because of the abuse she endured and because her father was never there and her mother beat her down and she was so confused growing up. She had this hatred in her heart. So we're sorry that she killed her uncle, but one day she would absolutely kill somebody. Look at how she was raised. And that's how they determined whether or not I was a murderer, based on my trauma, based on things that had happened to me in my past. Now, I didn't know that this would be the case at 21 years old, or else I would have made some better decisions when I was younger. I would have never beat that girl up in 8th grade. Hello. I definitely wouldn't have took that girl's man in 10th grade because I wouldn't have got pregnant. But guess what? I didn't know then. But that's why I'm so passionate now about coming and speaking to you guys, to make sure that you know. Because when we know better, we do better, is what I heard. And so that verdict got overturned. I was convicted of murder. That verdict got overturned. Once that verdict was overturned, I got out of jail. Because again, I'm a teacher. I'm not a murderer. But what I found out real quick was trauma was trying to be my mama. And a physical prison would have been a lot better than the mental prison I had to endure from what the pain and the shame and the guilt that I had taken the life of the man, the only man who ever bought my baby's diapers and never asked for anything in return. The mental prison of having to live with myself everywhere that I went, it drove me to do things I said I'd never do. My mother was a drug addict. I would never do drugs. I wouldn't even touch him until I was carrying around the fact that I killed my uncle. My mother was an alcoholic. I wouldn't take alcohol because I knew it could make you so angry and rage and all these things it did to my mother until I was carrying the guilt of taking my uncle's life. Because guess what I found out real quick? When I was on Molly's, when I popped Xannies and took perks, I couldn't cry. It seemed like the trauma and the pain I've went through my whole life, they became nothing. So it was so easy to fall into addiction. Because it was the only way that I didn't feel what I was feeling. And after getting out of jail, my whole life changed. I didn't want to go through another trial because I didn't want my grandmother to have to get back on the stand and testify for me. It was her son that was murdered. So I pled guilty to manslaughter. As much as I knew it was an accident, I pled guilty to manslaughter, and that changed my whole life. I was unable to get housing. I couldn't get a house. I couldn't get an apartment. I couldn't get a job. Everywhere I went, now I was a murderer regardless. Nobody wanted to hear my sad story about how I shot a gun in the air at a graduation party and the bully killed my uncle. Nobody wanted to hear that. So all they did was a background check. And in that background check, oh, she's a liability. We can't hire her. She might have all the skills that we need her to have, but we can't hire her. So there went another label I started walking in. I started walking in being a murderer. I had to go to family functions. My family completely forgave me. They loved me. They forgave me. He had 6 children, his mother, his sisters, everybody that took care of me growing up. I couldn't not go. I've been going to family functions my whole life. So guess what? I had to start getting even higher. Start taking more drugs, drinking more alcohol, messing around with more people. Because again, I'm acting out of trauma. Trauma's my mama now. I'm self-sabotaging. I'm doing things that, I'm going to leave before you leave me. I'm people-pleasing. I'm trying to make everybody happy but myself because I'm so miserable. But ultimately, I decided I got to go. I cannot live this life anymore. I was going to pick up 400 ecstasy pills because the only way I thought that I would be able to be free of me was death. And I don't know, maybe some of you, I attempted my first suicide at 13. So maybe some of you in here have these, you've gone through some stuff like this. I do a lot of suicide prevention, and I speak with young people all the time who you wouldn't even think. They got great lives, you think, on the outside, but on the inside, they're slowly dying. And so I thought that the only way to get rid of me was to get rid of me. And I was going to pick up 400 ecstasy pills. And going to pick up these pills, I made the wrong turn at the right place, and there was a car wash with a church called Victory Outreach. Now, they're all over the nation. Some of you may have even heard of Victory Outreach, but Victory Outreach reaches gang members, drug addicts, the down and outs, those that nobody else reaches. And I was raised in the church with my other families, but guess what? Those families, I had no idea anything about God. But ultimately, community came around me. They gave me a sense of belonging. And there was a young man with a teardrop tattoo. Who knows what a teardrop tattoo means? Anybody?
Jumped in.
Yes, or they took a life, correct? So when you have a teardrop, that usually means that you took a life. And that the only person who could have spoke to me on that day, because I had already determined that I had to die, was a gentleman with a teardrop tattoo. Nobody else could have told me anything about anybody or my life being good or anything happening to me, but somebody with a teardrop tattoo. And because he had a teardrop tattoo, I knew he knew. And I trusted him. And so I'm here today to let you know that maybe you're going through some of the things I've been through. Maybe there's abuse going on in your home right now. Maybe there are some things that you don't know how to get of right now, a reputation you can't shake right now. Maybe you are labeled already as the angry black girl, the crazy white girl, or whatever that looks like. Maybe there's something that you heard in me that you know is true for yourself. So I just came to remind you that with community, we can overcome anything. Because once I started getting involved, there were women that were like, no, your kids will not, you are the mother of those children. You will get your kids back. You will get married one day. I would say before, I'm not marriage material. You don't know me. You don't know what I've been through. I'm not marriage material. No, you will be married one day and you need to know how to cook, they would say. And they would take me to their house. And they would teach me to cook. And they invested in me. They reminded me that I am not what I have done. And that my past does not determine what my future is. And that trauma ain't my mama. And it was in that moment when those women started to really speak life into me that I realized how many dead things have been spoken to me. Oh, you're always going to be like your mama. You won't never be nothing. You're going to leave like your daddy. You won't never. What do you think you're going to do to your kids? Your kids would be better off with somebody else like you were better off with somebody else. But it was when the community wrapped around me and began to remind me that I am fearfully and wonderfully made, that my life matters, that I have purpose. I will get my kids back. I will be a wife one day. I am somebody. My life matters. My story matters. And everything that I've been through, all the pain, God has a purpose for it. Ultimately, there's a purpose for it. And I started believing what they had to say to me. So I came here today to be your community. I came here today to let you know that it doesn't matter what you've been through, what you're going through, what you might go through later. You can become the author of your next chapter. Again, I didn't write this book for nothing. This is my mug shot right here. My name used to be McAllister, so that's my mug shot. And then right here, woman indicted, charged with murder in the death of her uncle. The reason I even wrote this little book that anybody can read is simply to be able to write the next chapter of my story so that all my pain now has a purpose. It's not for me to hold on to. And you'll see now that each one of you have a journal. You were given those journals so you can start writing. I want you to start writing the next chapter of your story. I want you to know that your life can be rebuilt. And maybe you haven't gone through maybe what I'm going through is deep, and you just haven't gone through it, and that's okay. But we all have gone through something. Doesn't matter what it is. The death of a grandparent. My daughter lost her first child. I went through the death of my grandson. So we all have gone through something that tries to dictate how we go through things now. After my daughter lost her son, she was afraid to get pregnant again. And then when she did get pregnant, she didn't want to have a baby shower because she didn't know if the baby was going to come all the way to term. Now she's had 3 beautiful children. They all live in South Africa with her husband, and I've been able to go to South Africa, and it's beautiful. But when you're going through it, you don't know. So my goal today is just to remind you that you are not what you have been through. Trauma does not have the final say-so, and you get to write the next chapter in your story. So I came to encourage you to make sure that you write the end from right now. What do you want to do? Where do you want to be in 90 days, in 6 months? And sometimes we can't see no farther than 9th grade. Sometimes we can't, and I understand that. But you will be graduating. What will you do then? School has been a lot of young people's lives their whole life. And when they graduate, they don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. They go to more school. They're people pleasing again. They're doing what they think other people want them to do. And then they end up dropping out. And what do you really want to do? What are you passionate about? What would you do every single day and nobody has to pay you a penny for it? Right now. What would you do? For some of you, it might be hair. For some of you, it might be art. You might like to rap or do poetry. That's the thing you should be doing. That's the thing that brings you joy. That's where your passion lies. And those things are okay. You don't have to be a doctor, a lawyer, or this or that. All the things the world wants you to be. You can be you and be okay with being you. So again, my name is Rachel. I thank you for listening. And I'll be here. I'm available afterwards if you guys have anything you want to talk to me about. I'll talk to you soon.